So the village where we had our mission was very isolated. We had no phone reception, no internet, no nothing, So, that was my first mission, like drop deep
Yeah.
into it, and
Timea, we're jumping right in. Thank you for that nugget, by the way, about the cats. But I have to ask, right? So here you are, you left Europe, right? When you were leaving Europe at a very early, tender age of 18, going to America where you were supposed to be just for a year. The Europe you left was actually the Europe that you described as the communism side, because you're from Eastern Europe and all that stuff. And then you went to you went to the US, where it's America, and so for 7 years, from 18 to the 7th year, like here you are learning new things about life and all that. And then you left America back to Europe, a different Europe, or different access, because now it's the European Union, you have the access to the rest of Europe. Yet you chose to give, or right now you choose to give about 14 years of your life, of your adult life, to Africa by now. What drives you?
So I think I can go back to the to the initial statement, which is still that, as I mentioned, cheesy statement. But I really do feel like everybody's born for a certain path, for a certain type of work, and we're good at many things, but not everybody manages to discover what is it that they passionate about, as well as perhaps able to contribute with their full heart and enjoy doing it. And so that's, I think, part of the reason why I feel really privileged to do this work, as difficult as it is. I really love the work we do, and it is rewarding in more than one way, and seeing the changes, especially the work that I do now. We work on sort of changing attitudes and changes of perspective, and helping people find alternative solutions to, rather than using violence, using peaceful methods to come to an agreement or some kind of a that's really it's really amazing to see, and that's all because of the people. It's not what we give, but it's the little that we give that is taken much further and multiplied by the people. I think what really helped me see, initially I joined another organization, so after MSF I worked with other humanitarian NGOs, and then later on I started to work with an NGO that worked on peaceful like mediation work, and that was
mediation work. Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
And that that really helped me to see that there's that part of the work where you can help, where mediation really does make a difference, in a totally different context, especially if you come in as a third party, completely neutral, who has nothing to earn or win or gain in that particular context or conflict. So I got to see that, and it was super interesting, because I was still like a support worker, but I insisted on being sitting in the room and really understanding how that happens, and what's really being said, and how do we even those who are very, very stuck on their positioning, that no, this is what we want and nothing else, and really hard to convince them to sort of move away towards something a bit more collaborative. It's super interesting to to see those interventions, and so that's what led me eventually to study basically after how much time? So in 2017.
Okay.
No, 2018. No, 17. Yes, sorry, 17 is when I came to London, and I decided to do my master's in violence, conflict, and development. So that's how.
So the mediation work led you there.
Yes. So I had that exposure to that mediation work, working on on conflict resolution, and even though I was still on the sideline, but at least I got that really good good, intro, really
Yes.
good experience. And then I said
Yes.
to myself, okay, you know what? Until now, I was working on, contributing to saving people's lives. But if
Yes.
the war continues happening, that
Yes.
that that space, it might still get wasted. So I said to myself, this work that I've just seen happening in front of my
Yes.
eyes might actually be something that's more meaningful, in a sense, to me, that more long term and more in a way that enters into sort of human psychology,
Yes.
really trying to understand deep inside what really happened, what goes in the person's mind, and those who really pick up arms. And when I studied that, basically what we call VCD, violence, conflict and development, it was
Okay.
really amazing, because we've sort of combined, it was a very multidisciplinary program, combining
Okay.
psychology, politics, sociology, political development, and so it's all really looking at that aspect of how do you transition from a conflict induced economy
Yes.
towards a
Yes.
peaceful economy. How do you accompany, or what comes first, state building, peace building, how do you work on refreshing people's lives who have
Yes.
been pulled into this situation, and it's not at all
Yes.
their fault,
Yes.
and
Just innocent bystanders. Just some
yeah,
people, just
and
because
victims,
you're born in a certain country and all of this is happening around you.
Yeah, and so it was super interesting, on top of what I have experienced before and seen in my work. So that basically led me to understand a bit more the framework around it. Of course,
Yes.
peace building as a field is a very new field. There's not
Yes.
really any rules around it. Like, at least for humanitarian work, you have the Geneva Conventions.
Right. That
they
makes
define,
sense.
they define somehow, some ways. Like, well, they're not. I have my opinion even on that one.
Yes.
I'm quite
Yes.
critical of all of that.
Okay.
But because they actually define how you're supposed to fight a war. Don't take prisoners from the other side, how to swap prisoners, how to don't hit civilian places and everything. So it's not really about not having a war. It's about more fighting a war that doesn't have so much civilian casualties. That's the Geneva Conventions. After
that's
the
great.
War.
It's crazy that you mentioned that. So it sounds more like, if you must, here's how you do it.
Well, exactly, which is crazy, because that was after the United Nations was created.
Yes.
After the Second World War and all the atrocities that happened during the two world wars, and they've seen all the massive destruction that happened everywhere. So they said, okay, well, at least we have to define the rules, rules of the game. You must
war guidelines. Yeah.
But anyway, so what I'm saying is that, at least in humanitarian field, we there has been long enough experience, even though it also started very colonial and very, very badly. Hopefully it's moving to a better place, but that's another subject we can get into maybe another time. It's for peace building, there isn't really any sort of manual there. We know we have some some ways, because some case studies, some situations of what worked, what didn't work, but you never just take okay, well, in Papua New Guinea, this situation worked, so we're gonna apply that to Central Africa. No, that never gonna work, and it's never what it's supposed to be done.
It's
and
Africa, of course, a vast continent that every place in Africa, every little country in Africa has its ways and different challenges.
Very, very diverse.
I can see that.
Absolutely.
And I want to go to something before I miss it, which is, you're opening our eyes to these different facets, these buckets that actually all link, right? So you explained clearly what the humanitarian side is. You touched a part that you accidentally stumbled into, which is more like the mediation part, right? The mediation part is you fairly highlighted the political side of that, where you're bringing two people to the table, you're mediating, you're helping. I can see how that is linked to what you do now, which is more the peace building, but I want to know what the difference is, because it sounds like that led you to where you are right now. So there has to be a shift there. So what's the difference between mediation and what you do now?
Well, in a sense, in a very technical term, and I hope I'm not wrong, but mediation is basically between two people. But when
Yes.
it comes to
True. It's
facilitating
got to be true. Yeah.
when you're doing peace building, it's usually not between two people, because it's groups of people who lost trust between
Whoever's
themselves.
affected.
Yeah.
Got it.
And so what we do is we facilitate dialogue. So that's actually what we do inside peace building, is basically facilitating dialogue. Looking at, how do you say, you still do what we call shuttle mediation,
Yes.
which is if those two groups have been too far apart, and when you start to introduce yourself as what we call a third party, as a neutral third party who can come and help and bring them close together, you first have to go and speak to them separately. So what we call is, I go to this group, I speak to them, look, I'm here, I have no interest whatsoever in in any of your fights. I'm only here to make sure that you two can actually speak to each other and find solutions. So you go to them, but you tell them that I'm going to go see the other one as well. So you don't hide anything. And you can also ask them, what is it that, if there's any message that they're ready to already send to the other group. And then you come back and then you go see the other group. And you said, I just came back seeing this group, this is who I am, this is what, what I'm here for. So this is what we call sort of shuttle diplomacy, when they are not yet ready to meet. And so it is still, mediation in that sense. And so once they say, okay, well, fine, we agree to sit down around the, the table or the fire or whatever, the camp, that's when we say, okay, well, then now we organize a dialogue, and we try to, what's important in these situations is, well, okay, yeah, exactly. So it's important to rebuild the bridges. That's I think the key. Many groups of people manage to do that on their own. So of course, it's not like a neutral third party is necessary everywhere. But in some situations where that has been way too far and the grievances have lasted too long, it's much more difficult for them to reach out to each other than having sort of an intermediary in between who says, look, you can do this. And so that's what we do. But in sort of a longer, let's say in a more global sense, because what we do in Central Africa at the moment is we focus on the conflict between farmers and migrant herders. And this phenomenon is actually very common in many of the African countries.
It is. Sounds like it. Yep.
Move around with with a lot of cattle.
The nomads,
Exactly. And then some of them are nomads, some of them are just going basically back and forth, which is there's a difference between. And then basically they come into Central African Republic, which has massive amount of pasture land and very poorly protected borders, as it is, So, and of course, it has been agreed even between countries that this is a form of economy that is allowed in the CEMAC zone, in the Central African zone. Countries have agreed between each other and said, look, this is okay. Your herders can come. But of course, with the uprising of the Seleka in 2012 and 13, the whole system that used to let's say welcome them, that used to allow the herders to come in and be able to have a structure around, so they don't come in with the diseases, and there's a way to collect taxes, and the routes or so-called corridors used are very distinguished ones, so that people are not supposed to cultivate along those corridors. That used to be all defined, but of course that all completely fell into an abyss, after the coup d'etat of Seleka.
After the coup d'etat happened. You again, Timea, it is fascinating. That's why these topics are so broad. Every single one of them sounds rushed because of already where we are headed. Where I want to go is the fact that for about 14, 15, if we include Tanzania, years of your life already, you've given to this place, you've given to this continent. And when I say you've given, because there's a level of service there. And for a lot of people outside of that, a lot of us that have not taken that as a job or a career, there's not a lot we know. And so a lot of it is influenced, by just things that you hear. I've lived here, in January, I'll be here in the States for 20 years.
Wow.
And as an African that has access to knowing things about Africa because I know people locally, if I only consume what it is that when I turn my TV on, watching a game or listening to some celebrity, if I consume that, what I'll hear is about how much help, Africa needs. Nobody talks about Africa without bringing those words like poverty, like help, like aid, like all of that, right? And you have a different, view because you've been there more than a lot of us that live here now. What I want to ask is, when it comes to that, all the organizations, and you've touched a couple of them that do different things, of all these organizations, because there's a lot of them, soliciting, donations and aid and continuous help and stuff like that. And so the bad rap that we hear from the West, right, is how certain organizations get a lot of criticism about their work at home. And so you will hear money grab, you will hear, no, not enough aid is going there. Even big ones like the Red Cross, like you will hear all of these things. I want to hear your perspective or your perception of this mentality that is almost planted in our heads, where there's the trust has been shaken between the people that donate to these organizations and somebody like you that have worked in these organizations and you are in the field. What can you say about that?
No, I honestly, I'm not surprised, and I was just as doubtful, as everybody else, because there is, okay, so I think there's multiple things, along the way that. So first of all, I touched upon a thing that, initially this whole aid work, this whole aid business, of course, started out as this like white savior syndrome, oh my God, we're gonna come here and we're gonna save the continent, and I don't know what, which is a complete bullshit. Excuse my language. I'm not supposed to use bad words, but
okay.
And that's again, that's where it all started. That's what it was very much, white led, and very much like, oh, they need us. Of course, never really mentioned that, all the harm that the colonization has done, actually has led, started the whole devastation of economies and everything, So, and then also the way that it started was like, we're gonna come and we're gonna distribute because there's hunger, so we have to distribute food, and we're gonna distribute this and that. So that's where what we learned about was the syndrome of the extended hand, which is, it's an actual term, like, because you extend your hand because please give me something, so you just continue giving instead of actually thinking about the repercussions. You get people used to the fact that you just continue giving, which is absolutely a recipe for disaster. And that was another, so sort of the foreign aid, has somehow, I don't know, after many years, which is, it should have taken much shorter than that, move towards to say, okay, well, you know what, rather than, give a man a fish, teach him how to fish in the river. And so that means you teach him skills. And, that's when they said, okay, well, capacity building. Okay, we're going to have to invest a lot more into the capacity building. And then all of a sudden you have all these organizations who are like, okay, yes, we are here to build the capacity. Again, without, going in blindly, many of them before, and I'm not gonna, I'm not picking on anybody, but, it was like, okay, well, yeah, because we're coming, because they don't have the skills, and then, finally where we are today, and I'm really hoping that it has come sort of a full term, and it's maybe yet still to improve, is where we say, okay, let's see, you cannot just come in and, you cannot have this crazy symptom in your head that, oh my God, you're coming to save the world and you know more than they do, and you're gonna just, I don't know, all of a sudden with 6 months of a mission, now the country is gonna turn into this. No, that's bullshit. It's complete bullshit. Because everybody had already their culture. They are so resourceful, and the whole continent is full of knowledge. It's massive. It's massive, and it's so rich. And so, in which is why I get really worked up about this whole subject, because I hated that, that initial way, even like policy, if you look at the initial policies of like giving loans to the countries, the conditions that came with those loans were absolutely horrendous. And I think until today, those have not really changed, it continues in, putting countries into, the poverty. So, it really takes, again, it's like a vicious cycle with old colonial powers, because they say, yes, so we granted you independence, so now you have whatever self-determination and all that. But many of those colonial powers continue extracting natural resources until today for
Yes.
pennies, for nothing.
Yes. Yes.
And continue what do you say, like imposing conditions
Yes.
on
Yes.
foreign policy, on
Yes.
importation, things
Yes.
that actually really matter when you're trying to build up a country, you're trying to build an internal economy, you're trying to build up
Yes.
resilience of your country.
Yes.
All of that needs to be in your hands. It's not somebody else from outside who's going to dictate that, which is, again, but it's very hard for countries and politicians to pull away from that, because they might not get, the financing that they need to continue running,
Yes.
certain activities or
Yes.
governmental
Yes.
projects and stuff like that.
Uh-huh.
So this dependence is horrible. And that until today, it continues. Of course, we see some of those fractures happening. And I really hope, I will be the first one, honestly, to, wish for that real rise to happen, that real, grabbing the momentum and really using all those resources that Africa has, and everything, I'm not only talking about, natural resources, I'm also talking about people and
the
everything,
human resource side. Yeah.
Exactly. And so that's that's on that side. And so kind of coming back to what we do, and I kind of try to tie it in, is that even in our work now, it's not like we come in and we like, oh, well, you have to listen to each other, you have to talk to each other. Not at all. We come in and we say, all right, tell us, let us learn from you. What is it that you've been living until now? How long has it been happening? What, why does it bother you? What led you to the situation where you are today, and what peace looks like for you? Because peace can mean so many different things for different people. You cannot enforce your perception of peace on somebody else, because that's absolutely not, it doesn't work. So we really try to do it in that way and say, all right, so I understand, this is how you see your future, this is how you see, perhaps a beneficial future for everybody. Then we speak to the others. So when we sit them down to each other, we then say, all right, we heard from you this, we heard from you that, you're now here together, how are you ready to make that work? So again, the solutions come from them, not from us. We are only there to facilitate this bridge, because we cannot know any better. It's their lives and it's their situations, their experience, and we are nobody there. We are really just there to hold up that bridge so that people can actually find it.
And I totally see how a third party can help in that condition. And something you've already mentioned, your beloved Central African Republic. I recently just saw a video that's going around about the uranium that they have, that France has been buying from them for about 80 cents a kilogram for a long time, until now recently they want to change it to market price, which is about 200 euros or so, like a kilogram. So that kind of change, where all this wealth that France is taking away from them, that they want to now pull back in their own hands and control. And this is the natural resource side and everything that's going. And that leads me to wanna know. You're working in Central African Republic right now. You're going back and forth, and of recent, we know what's in the news. We know the like Burkina Faso. We know that level of anti-colonialist or anti-France sentiment, right?
Yeah.
As somebody whose work has nothing to do with all of that, right?
Yeah.
But it's all bundled up in that peace building mission. Personally, as how is your safety like for somebody whose presence, in a country like that, can be misunderstood if it's not something that's information that the person across from you is privy to? How are you handling yourself personally as far as your safety?
Well, we, when we work in conflict zones, it always comes with a certain risk. So, no matter what, you have to be, I suppose you have to have a certain risk appetite, which is, my boss keeps on telling me I have quite high one.
So you have a high one, starting from Congo.
But I really, I really, how should I phrase that? So basically, when you look at Central Africa, people do tell the difference whether somebody is humanitarian or somebody is there to do something else. So that's one thing. Then they also can tell the difference if somebody is from France, for example, or another country. So, for example, I work for a British NGO, or what we call charity in UK, and we have not been ever like, I don't know, mistaken for French people, as well as neither have been, has people thought that any of the work we do has anything to do with sort of, ex-colonial powers. And of course, we remain always neutral. So we have no opinion, on whatsoever, on none of that in terms of, our work, because we're there only for the people and nobody else.
That's
But
good
I
to
have
hear,
not.
because that work needs to continue. Yeah. Coming back to just what you do and what you do for the continent, I'm talking about this as an African, being outside, knowing that this is a job that, I've not done. I wouldn't say I wouldn't do. There was a time that I was interested in this, but a lot of the people that are my audience right now, this is not something that they're doing. Again, it's not something that they know about.
Yeah.
So I want to bring this to, something that we talk about here at StemToRoots, where, we're looking at ourselves as, sons and daughters of the continent. There's a certain level of interest in wanting to be home, or at least being a part of, the rise, being a part of, the development that Africa requires. And so here at StemToRoots, we like to talk about those things that either has caused the prolonged stay away from the continent, or the ongoing, existence of these things that has slowed down the number of people that leave the continent and come back. Infrastructure, safety, health conditions, and stuff like that. All of those things present, and a lot of my guests actually expressing these things and having their families away from the continent. You're here, again, 15, 16 years living over there. What can you tell my people from this end that have expressed these reasons why, there is that hesitation to come home? Just anything you want to share as somebody who's been there in person.
I'm gonna really stick to, I'm in no position, to tell anybody, what they should do, because first
Fair
of all,
enough. Yep.
me going there, I go with an organization, so I already go
Yes.
with a certain, let's say, guarantees, even if there's never guarantee for surviving situations, but
Right.
there's a certain things that they will provide for me. So of course, I do have a place where I stay, which of course I still have to be the one looking for it. And when it comes to access in certain areas, we negotiate with those who hold the guns and whatever. But like that's my experience, going to a continent that I really love, and I really love contributing.
I know that.
I cannot neither judge. I mean, I came away from my country, look at me living in a totally new country. So I cannot judge somebody else for going away and trying to find a better situation abroad, especially providing for their families, again. And then the continent is massive, places where I go to are mostly the difficult parts, and again, so me telling somebody, well, you should go back, that's absolutely, I'm in no position to do that. I know that it's very much of a how do you say, like a affair of the heart, like close to the heart, because of course, you guys want to, as you say, you want to contribute back. And I think you have done some amazing work, even from the distance, trying to help out, with the health facilities and such. And I think that's really amazing. That's really amazing, because, you're able to at least contribute your way, even if you don't manage to go back. And honestly, I mean, there's people that I know, people who did go back and try to sort of fill that gap, because when it comes to let's say the business end, and the economy, there's massive opportunities that are there, that should be filled, with local ownership and with plenty of local resources. But again, it's not, it comes with its own risks. It comes with it with with a very big determination. And I myself enjoy living in London, when I'm not in Central African Republic. I enjoy, the comfort of what it offers. So I
What
cannot
it
tell somebody,
offers.
well, how come you're not going back and, helping? I should be also going back to Slovakia and helping my own country, if
Good.
it comes to that. So it's very difficult, I think people have to decide for their own. And if anything, if they cannot go back, at least maybe they can help from the distance, if that's something that they
And
feel need to
that
do.
answer is acceptable. That answer is very, very acceptable because what you're trying to say, or what you're saying actually, is that uh, um, if it is in your heart to help or to be a part of what should build the continent,
Yeah.
being present is not the only route, right? Being
Yes,
there
absolutely.
physically is not the only route, and that's something that we've talked about here over and over. Every time that somebody drops a nugget that is worth sharing,
Mm-hmm.
I do bring it up in, oh, you hear that opinion, or you hear that suggestion, or you hear that recommendation on what you can do without being there physically, if that's not a place that you are yet, right?
Mm-hmm.
I can't
Mm-hmm.
believe we're here right now, and there's just a whole lot more that I want to talk about. I'm gonna cheat and take a couple of more minutes from you, right?
That's fine. Yeah.
Because you're based in, so you're based in London, but you spend a lot of time in Central African Republic. You've been
Yeah,
in Mauritania. You've
kind of the
been
other way around.
on the other side of Africa, Congo. You've Libya. So you've crisscrossed the continent. But like you said, you mostly in areas or places that require that level of help and service or for your expertise. Do you actually have time at all to enjoy the side of Africa that is not seeking or needing your service, but more to enjoy another place in our world where there's life, there's enjoyment, there's vibrance? Do you have time for that at all?
Yes. I make time. I make time. I really. I mean, that's another reason why I love being there. The vibe which I never got in any other place. Than in many of the sub-Saharan African countries. It's just very heartwarming. And
Yeah.
so for me, it has to be part of, like, let's say, my weekend. If
Uh-huh.
I'm not overworking myself with whatever 15 hours a day,
Yeah.
which can be quite a usual thing. But
Hmm.
then we Friday nights we go out and we dance, and we really just dance our stress away, and really have fun and enjoy. And in many uh, in many places, I really, for example, now what I'm doing, like, I'm opening Chad and Cameroon to extend the program, hopefully for a regional project, because herders come from the other side of the border. So, of
Okay.
course, we need to
Okay.
address issues also in their home country, not just in where they come
Yes.
to.
Yes.
Um, and a lot of, sort of this part of work that I do by just going there and sitting down with people and having a
Yes.
chat, a very
Yes.
simple chat that looks like a totally simple chat, but I learned so much, and they share their lives with me. And for me, it doesn't have to be, always the fun part. It doesn't always,
Yes.
it doesn't feel like, okay, I'm here to listen to your needs. I'm just here because I want to hear your story. And for me, that's already like, and the warmth of people, with whom we work together, like all these representatives of herders, for example,
Yeah.
who know that we are there to serve both, the interest of both sides, and make things, peaceful. That's already comes with, with the vibe of the continent. It's really how do you say, marking, besides the
Yeah.
fact that the work is rewarding. The human context, the human warmth is just really
Yes.
exceptional. So for me, yes, I do that, I think, also part of my work, and I also do
Yes.
find time for that in my free time, whenever I have some free time, and
Timea,
discover
this is
local
this is
beauties.
this is this is why I wanted you here, and somebody that knows you as a friend, somebody that went to the same school as me like a long time ago. I don't want to date us, I don't want to put an age here. uh, the work you do, I'm always fascinated by, because at a younger age, I had that interest, and there are things that led me away from it, but I had that interest, and I admire you, and you know this. I admire you for doing it. An Africa that a lot of Africans don't know. Right. And so that's why I wanted you here to give us that perspective. And you've done a tremendous job today in explaining it. I've captured from you the different sides of the help aid collaboration or work that happens in that vast world of humanitarian organizations, right? We all bundle all of it in one. Hopefully somebody will learn today the
Yeah.
different buckets that are involved. I appreciate the fact that you've given almost most of your adult life, to doing work in a continent that you're not born from, but you've taken in your heart to be a part of in actually helping in different ways. I appreciate what you just mentioned last, which is where, because you work in that continent, and most of your job requires that it's places that have a negative connotation, and by that I mean war, conflict, need, and all of that, but you
Yeah.
find time to enjoy a side of the continent that is more important to you, or that you've fallen more in love with, and you've expressed this before. That's why I'm able to talk on your behalf, matter of fact, where you're able to go to beautiful places, you're able to enjoy sites, you're able to visit and actually put the stress down and know that it's a continent more vast than the work that you do. All of that you're bringing in without us even touching on all of the things that can be talked about a very huge continent. I wanted to mention that in conclusion, because that's important to mention. Your work is one that's needed, and I hope more people from all around the world, when they find it in their heart, commit themselves to Africa in that way, because it's a continent of need, as it also is a continent with abundance. So
It
I just
is. It
appreciate
is.
you. That's why I wanted your voice here.
I wanted one last thing, is that that it's important, especially in the work that we do. We are trying to work our way out of the job, which means that what we do
That's
is
good to hear.
we're working with the locals and building their capacity, because it's them who can resolve their problems. So once that happens automatically and autonomously, and this in the end resilient way, that even if there's political shocks, or I don't know, a pandemic or anything that comes, that mechanism of peaceful resolution remains, because people have a lot less destruction and loss of life and loss of livelihoods, with peaceful solutions to the conflict. That if that can continue on its own, which is what we're really working on, then we
Wow.
succeeded. So
I
it's not
like
like
that. I like that.
we are here to do something. It's really
I like
important that
that.
that needs to function, so that we can get out
I
and
like
let
that.
people do their job.
I like that. That's big to conclude on. You're telling me that even though you've spent about 14 years in all different kind of jobs, but your ultimate goal is to not have a job. By that meaning, yeah, it's
Yeah,
not, it's to not have that job,
that job. Yeah.
because for your success, it
Mm,
means there's no peaceful resolution to bring. There's no peace to build, because it's already there. If that's the
exactly.
ultimate and that's what's in your heart, that is one thing that the continent needs from you. And thank you very much for mentioning that as a conclusion. Thank you, Timea. I think
No
that's what
problem.
I have to tell you.
Thank you for having me and giving me this opportunity to talk. I can talk for ages, so for sure
I
there's
know
a
that.
lot of things that
That's why
we
I'm
haven't
that's why I'm
covered.
cutting you. That's why I'm cutting you off.
It's exactly. That's why I need those guiding questions. Otherwise, I'll be all over the place talking about everything. But no, I really enjoy chatting with you, and thank you for the time and the interest that you've taken. To
Yes,
hear.
yes.